Views expressed by Casters Guild members are only the opinions of that member, and that could change from day to day. Guild members may use mature language, but that in no way means they are mature. Listener discretion is advised.
There's nothing like pounding your head against a brick wall over and over again until it breaks. And even better when an amazing setting and a rich story falls out. Be ready to bleed for fun, because that's the spell we're casting tonight on Casters Guild. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's episode of Casters Guild. I am your guild master, Rick. I don't like to roll. I'd rather Perry.
Jesus Christ. I'm your guild master, Baron Kane, and I have yet to get good.
And joining us tonight is a returning guild member and a brand new one. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ryan Seguin. You guys have if you've listened to the cast before, you probably heard me. I am a arcade hardware preservationist at this point. I'm also an avid nerd of all things. I've beaten every Souls game, still working on Elden Ring, and I've also been taking Japanese for the last 6 years.
Hey, what's going on? My name is Gunnar Calloway, joining here for the first time. Very happy to be here. I have a long-running track record in a lot of open RPG adventure games, tabletop games in the last probably 6 years, playing mostly D&D 5th edition and some homebrews, and I'm friends and co-workers, we'll say, with Rick, and who invited me to join. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. It's great to have you here at the Guild. All right, so tonight, I don't know, we're calling them Souls games, From Software games. From Software games, I think, might be a little limiting, because there are Souls-types games that aren't made by From Software. But yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about games so hard it makes you want to break a controller. So, what is your favorite Souls-type game?
Elden Ring. Next question.
It's a beautiful game. It's just pretty. It's very pretty.
I've affectionately called it Screenshot Simulator, because half the time I'm wandering around and I get so wrapped up in the atmosphere, and I have a folder now with probably 100 different screenshots of the game just from playing.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
I'm trying to think. I think Elden Ring might take the top spot. Before that, it was Sekiro for sure.
Man, I want to like Souls games so bad. I got to be honest with you, I'm just not good enough. My current favorite Souls game, and I only call it a Souls game because other people tell me it's a Souls game, is Jedi Fallen Order, because I absolutely adored that game. I know, right? They tell me that's a Souls type game, but I love Jedi Fallen Order, and I was actually able to beat that one. I desperately wanted to like Bloodborne, but after attempting the first boss for 4 hours, I was just like, no, I can't do this anymore. I have other games I want to play. The Bloodborne was totally my aesthetic, and I loved everything about it. It's just too hard for me. And every time I see anything about Elden Ring, I see gameplay, I see anything about it, I'm like, man, I really want to play that game, but at the same time, I'm like, do I want to drop $60 on a game that I'm just going to stop playing after the first week? Maybe after it gets a little cheaper, I'll buy it just to see, because I understand it's a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier than some of the older titles. So maybe I'll see if it's accessible enough for me after it drops price a little bit.
I definitely feel that way. As somebody who has just now sort of adopted their immense love and respect for the Souls games, I think your intro, Rick, was very apt, where you find this game that you beat your head against the wall until it breaks. And there's some level of primal like joy and sense of accomplishment in that. And I did not get that from the other games. I played a lot of Dark Souls 3, played a little bit of Bloodborne, and like you, it was hard for me to seek and pursue that joy to get over the difficulty of it. And that's not something I think I've enjoyed in a lot of the other games I've traditionally played. So I guess I want to ask, as someone like Ryan, who's played all of them, and you're working on finishing Elden Ring, do you feel like, of all the games, Elden Ring is the most accessible, the most approachable from everything that From Software has released thus far?
In a way, yes and no. It's the most... So, like, calling them Souls games is kind of weird when you consider the ones that don't have souls in the title. Like Elden Ring is basically Dark Souls 4.
Sure.
But they finally gave us a map. And I think that, Elden Ring is absolutely the most approachable core Souls games, like I guess medieval European Souls game, counting out Sekiro and Bloodborne, because even though I love those games, they're kind of their own thing. I always like to imagine that like the Souls series fell out of this alternate universe where Castlevania never stopped having animation commitment. Because if you go from like Rondo of Blood to Symphony of the Night, you go from being stuck in your animation, like if you F it up, you're screwed, to just whipping around, exploring a castle, whatever. Like it just became a pure exploration action game. But like in this alternate universe where they were like, Konami went, no, we're keeping that, but we're adding the JRPG elements. You get Souls. And I mean, personally, I started with FromSoft games way back when they were doing like Kingsfield on the PS1, and like and those games are basically Souls games that look like really early Elder Scrolls games. They're rough. They're not good, but you can see where FromSoft was going from that. And then they were like, yeah, F it, we're not doing, medieval action games anymore. We're going to make games where you play giant robots forever. And then they stopped doing that when Miyazaki was like, no, I think we should go back to medieval action games. And I started with Demon's Souls on PS3, and I bounced off that game hard at first. Because I was like, I think you guys can absolutely correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, I think the thing that makes people bounce off of it so hard is the animation commitment aspect of it. Because when we're so used to playing character action games like Devil May Cry or God of War or what have you, or pretty much any other action RPG, even so far as like Zelda that doesn't have like character advancement mechanics, you're used to being able to like cancel your animations. And if there's a mistake that you made, you're not committed to the mistake. But, you get into that Souls game and it's like, nope, you fucked up and it's your fault. And you can't blame anybody else because all of these enemies move slow as shit. They're all in molasses. They telegraph. They hold signs up and tell you, I am about to punch you in the face. And
in 3,
2, 1. Yeah.
2.
Yeah. And like that's hard, especially if you've been playing video games for a long time, because you're like, okay, I can't keep getting punched in the face. Clearly it's this game. And there's like this wonderful video online of like a boxer actually pointing out why that's not true. There's cognitive dissonance there, where like his training partner, he's like, all right, hold up your hands. He's like, I just want you to move your hand out of the way for each hit.
Yes, I've seen this.
Yeah. For the first 2, he goes really fast. And for the third one, he just goes in real slow and just taps him. And he actually catches the guy on the third one. And Dark Souls is like that, where if you're like, well, I'm used to every video game I play making my brain tweak at 1,000 miles an hour, that when it's just like the steamroller scene from fucking Austin Powers,
Mm-hmm.
you realize you are the guy that just won't get out of the way. Like that sucks until you get used to it. So yeah, I think that the thing that makes Elden Ring the most approachable out of all of them is the fact that if you're like, that's hard, fuck that, these mountains are awesome, and I'm going to go see what these guys over here that I can punch in the face are doing, and then you get a boatload of experience. And Elden Ring flattened out the defensive stats. And so like, it's not something that if you're really into the series, you don't notice. But in all of the previous Souls games, each different stat that you invested points in gave you a different amount of defense in different areas. In Elden Ring, it is a flat +1 to all of your defenses, no matter what you put points in. So even if you spec wrong, eventually you become an unstoppable machine if you keep leveling up. And I think that's why that it and the fact that you can run around in the open world, explore things, fight monsters that are easy to kill, even without realizing it, eventually you become more and more unstoppable.
I wonder if the Tree Sentinel in Elden Ring is like the most vindicated boss, because I bet a lot of people who try to fight, it's the first enemy, like the hard enemy that you encounter outside of like the intro to the game. And like personally, that happened to me. I couldn't beat him. I ran around powered up to the point of excess, reached God mode, and came back and just crushed him. Like ultimate vindication and just a little bit of teabagging. I'll admit it was very satisfying.
That's
And
when you pull
yeah,
out those emotes.
yeah, the Elden Ring, and one of my personal favorites is the Rapture, where just the arms come up very slowly as the dust flies of your enemy into the wind.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Because I'm trying to think, like, if any of the other Souls games off the top of my head, because like Demon Souls. By the way, if you have a PS5 and you haven't played the Demon Souls remake, I'm going to levy the controversial opinion that I think the Demon Souls remake on PS5 is the best game with Souls in the title.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that just a controversial opinion, or?
Well, I mean, I feel this is probably purely anecdotal, but like people pass over Demon Souls a lot. Like I don't think it gets talked about as much when we're talking about the like Souls games as a whole.
I think
like,
Baron was hinting at that sounded a little like a decree.
Oh. I don't know if I can decree other people's opinions. Is that a thing?
Well, it's your opinion
absolutely.
if you want to decree.
Yeah. Guild decree.
Oh.
Demon Souls is the best game with Souls in the title.
There you go.
Time.
Decree.
How many minutes?
We'll find out after I'm editing it.
Look, I'm just here for the
Put the
Guild
clap
decree
in.
any percent speed run. The reason that I feel that way is because when you go and fight the bosses in Demon Souls, they're all puzzles. There are in fact like 2 or 3 of them that don't even have like health bars. You don't fight them. Like there's a giant dragon inside of a volcano that you have to run around and activate ballistas until its face falls down and you just stab it once. There's like a giant like flying stingray lich that shoots lasers at you that you have to like convince to do certain dive bombing runs on you so that you can swipe it as it goes by. There's a giant that you have to get a special sword for that he's not hurt any other way. And like that's the most of the bosses in Demon Souls. And then like once you get into Dark Souls and Elden Ring and Bloodborne, all of the bosses, they're fun, they're good. This isn't a criticism, but they're all just I have attack animations. You have to hit me very hard. I hope that you've leveled up enough to fight me and you learn my animations. And that's all of them. And I kind of miss the puzzle aspect from Demon Souls, I think is the core of it.
Well, and I feel like that's the quintessential experience is it's powering up. It's, getting to these milestones and climbing these walls in the game that it sets before you. But it's not even the amount of like struggle in the combat, like you said, where you're learning the animations. The anticipation is unbearable, and some are quick paced, and you learn the combinations very quickly. And it's not just dying; it's that you lose all of the means for progress where you die, and then I hope to your various gods that you remember the labyrinth that you just ran through and you passed correctly to get back to the spot that you died. And then you have to restart the combat, and don't forget to pick up your souls/runes, because then you will lose your progress if you die again.
I will say the run is what killed Bloodborne for me, because I wanted to love Bloodborne. I watched playthroughs. The aesthetic was just on point, like that Victorian gothic, like almost steampunk kind of deal it had going on. The switch weapons, I was like, I love every part of this, until after dying to the same enemy over and over again and then having to run back each time. That's the part that killed it for me, was just I was spending more time getting back to the point where I died than trying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. So Elden Ring and Bloodborne are like on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum for that, because Elden Ring added fucking checkpoints. They added these respawn points outside of bosses so that you don't have to do the run anymore.
Yeah.
There are a few times where you have to, but like I love it. But Bloodborne, it was mind-boggling because like every Souls game that is not Bloodborne, if you sit down at the bonfire equivalent, you rest, enemies respawn. Bloodborne requires you to go back to town, to the Hunter's Dream. It requires you to town portal to do that every time and go through those terrible PS4 load times just to rest. And I was like, why? There's literally we've already solved this. There were 3 Souls games that came out before this. How did they fuck this up this bad?
It feels like regression. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think with the other Souls games, like when you rested, it refilled your flasks. But with Bloodborne, you have to kill enemies to get blood vials.
You can buy the blood vials. You can
But you have to kill in order to get the currency. Like no matter what, you have to kill enemies to get blood vials.
Sure. I think by 2 hours into that game, I had 99 on me. I couldn't burn through them fast enough. And that was kind of but that was kind of supposed to be the thing with that game, is that you can just keep jamming, needles full of blood into your leg until you're back up. If you had vials in your bank every time that you rested, it refill it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, in Demon Souls was that way, in a way. You had to eat grass instead. They didn't have the flask mechanic yet. So you had to spend your souls on healing items. It was kind of, again, a regression. And then they came out with Sekiro, and that game is so good. That game is so good that Jedi Fallen Order stole its entire combat system, whole cloth. That game is a full-on copy of Sekiro, bar none.
Yeah, but you get a lightsaber, so...
All is forgiven.
Well, I know I say that snidely, but also, it makes perfect sense because Star Wars is a samurai drama.
Yeah, you could tell it straight up rips off Kurosawa, so it does make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and the original trilogy, they're all using, oh my god, what is the Japanese fencing style? I cannot think of the word.
Bushido.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's the dedication to the spiritual practice.
You're right. You're right.
Kendo, thank you.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the word kendo. Yeah, they all use kendo stances and swings throughout the entire trilogy.
So to feed this tangent, now, was that something Lucas specifically mentioned? Like he was heavily inspired by, or
Kurosawa specifically? I believe
Kurosawa.
that he said that. And then there are direct parallels, especially to some of the characters, like C-3PO and R2-D2, I believe are based off of characters from The Hidden Castle.
That makes
Is
sense.
that the name of the movie?
Yeah.
There's 2 characters that are side characters, and they're always walking around together, and they're kind of like the comic relief, and he based them completely off of that. And then, some of the plot that was going on. There was 3 different movies that inspired the trilogy, and I can't remember what they are right off the top of my head.
Oh, it's probably, Ron.
Yes, that's one of them.
That whole trilogy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hidden.
And also thinking of The Mandalorian being inspired by westerns, and westerns were inspired by samurai dramas. It's just kind of the whole
full circle, like Elden Ring.
The Elden Ring. Yeah, and I like Jedi Fallen Order, but I actually bounced off of it pretty hard because I was like, I'm not beating Sekiro twice.
That's fair.
I will say though, even though I love Elden Ring, and Elden Ring is the most approachable, Sekiro is still my favorite game that FromSoft has made. Elden Ring has not dethroned that for me, because there are no levels, there are no stats, there are no experience points, really, in Sekiro. The only thing that you can do, you can unlock new techniques, but you have to get better, and that's it. And I love it.
And so, as someone, like I said, I'm sort of inducted as well, into this heavy respect and the level of commitment that you have. And it sounds like for Sekiro, I personally have not played the game yet, but playing Elden Ring, and it sort of swept away all of the begrudging, sort of frustration I had in some of the early forays to the other Souls and Bloodborne, those games. It's now made me reconsider, and I genuinely do want to give it another try, and I want to go back and play some of the ones that I haven't played before. I played a little bit of 1, I think the remastered version. I played 3 mostly. I tried Bloodborne, equally difficult, hard to get through the first couple fights, but playing Elden Ring and just getting so much more out of it this time. I had a conversation with my brother about this a couple weeks ago, and he was playing for the first time, and he's like, yeah, I both of us, I think we want to go back and really give it a second honest try. And whenever I get my hands on a PlayStation, I do really want to try Sekiro, because that is right up Shogun's alley. I mean, that's my whole moniker and everything. I'm very much passionate and love learning more about the Japanese mythos and all of their culture and history, and it just feels like that game is such a service to like you said, like you just need to get better, and there's not much more you can attain like from beating and progressing in the game than just like following the story beats. And it seems like it's definitely like an action story game from the clips and the people that I've watched play it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And it has the most narrative out of all of them. Like the main character.
The narrative, yeah.
It's got this very like, there's a Japanese civil war going on at the time, and you know he's the ninja for a lord, and so you have to basically try and save the world, but there's mystic shit going on at the same time. I love it. I'm not gonna. It's also on PC, so if you have a gaming PC, Sekiro plays amazingly well there.
Wait, is it really?
Yeah. I would only either play it on PC or PS5. The original PS4 version, not great.
I was under the impression that it was still a PlayStation exclusive. That changes things.
Yeah, the only two that are PlayStation exclusive are Demon's Souls and Bloodborne, because those were both produced by Sony.
Okay.
So Blue Point is the remaster studio that Sony owns that did the Shadow of the Colossus remaster, and they did the Demon's Souls remaster. So now that they've done Demon's Souls, people are like, so Blue Point, what are you going to do? Is it Bloodborne? You do Bloodborne? Bloodborne?
So I was hopping on Steam just to see what the price might be for Sekiro. No joke. I pop open Steam, Elden Ring is just right there. It's like, hey, here I am. Son of a bitch.
Have you heard of this game?
Have you? I mean, if you've heard of it.
It's only the number one game streamed on Twitch right now.
So Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is on Steam for $59.99.
Yeah, good.
Still full price, yeah.
Well, yeah, I would wait
Summer
for it to
sale's
go on.
coming.
Bandai Namco loves sales. You know,
Mhm.
if you can wait every season, there's another Steam sale.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, wait for it. It's so good. It started life as a Tenchu game, and if you've never played the Tenchu Stealth Assassin series, motherfuckers, I've got a game series for you. But FromSoft was like, yeah, I don't know if we can make a good Tenchu game, but you know what we could do? We could kind of squeeze this into our Souls formula and make a hybrid. It's so good. But
So
then-
Baron, I know you've been letting our guests go, and you never answered the original question.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
your favorite Souls game?
I don't. What are you talking about? I would have not had a good answer for you, since the theme was, Souls, but also games that are just so fucking hard that, you want to beat your head against the wall. But you said the Jedi Fallen Order, and I fucking love it. I mean, that's actually up there with one of my favorite games. However, I play it on easy.
It's one
that's
thing
what I
that
do.
Jedi Fallen Order has that a lot of these games don't, is a difficulty setting.
Yep.
Which, let's be honest, I think at this point, if they end up patching it later on, is needed. It's just, I understand for the hardcore purists and the people who this is a Souls game or you're not playing it right. You gotta do naked club retch runs or nothing else, no exceptions. Sure, if that's how you want to play your games, go for it. And I know this is about games that are extremely difficult and hard to master, but if you want to cater your experience, I think that should be allowed. And I think that's what helps people sort of, like you said, like being approachable and allowing them to explore. And I think it does that very well already in Elden Ring. But I also really would like there to be an option to adjust difficulty for the non-sweaty.
We brought this up during our MMO episode, and there's a saying that our guest on there taught me when I was playing MMOs, and it was, it's your $10 a month or it's your $15 a month. Play it how you want to play it. Like everybody who would tell me that, like, I'm playing my DPS wrong or playing my tank wrong or whatever, it's like, it's your $10 a month or your $15 a month. Play it how you want to play it. And I think that doesn't only apply to MMOs. I think it applies to video games as well. And that's the thing about all the purists who are like, don't put a difficulty setting in a Souls game. A Soul game is not supposed to have a difficulty setting. There's nothing stopping you from taking that difficulty setting and cranking it all the way up and then playing it because that's the way you want to play it. Just
Precisely.
because I put it on normal or easy or whatever it is that I want to put it on doesn't take away from your experience with the game. And The only way I could think of it messing with somebody is like the invaders and things like that. But you could also make it so like if someone is on very hard, they can't be invaded by someone who's on easy. I don't know, but like it's a simple enough answer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely that there should be different difficulty options, and really, you could make a core difficulty setting where it just is what it is. But for people that want to mess with it, you force them to play offline, because there's already the option to not be connected to the online systems.
Oh yeah.
And play that way, and then one of the things that you mentioned, invading, Elden Ring is actually a lot better about than the other ones. If you were connected online with any of the other Souls games, except Sekiro because it doesn't have online connectivity, Bloodborne doesn't have invading, but the other Souls games would have it so that like, oh, you're online, if you're in your human state or whatever, someone can invade you. In Elden Ring, someone can only invade you if you go through the effort of summoning someone else into your game as a cooperator. So if you've got a buddy playing with you, if you've opened yourself up to the multiplayer, then you can get invaded, which I thought was a really, really excellent change, because it allows people to say, like, I want to see the messages. I want to see some asshole telling me that there's a secret here, and me try and like slap this, this wall with my sword to see if there's an invisible wall here or not.
Liar ahead.
Liar ahead, exactly. I want the funny messages, but I don't want other people. I want the asynchronous part. And I want to see bloodstains. I want to see the 100 people that listened to that asshole that told him there's a secret on the other side of the cliff.
Yeah.
But I don't want people. And I love that they did that, and it wasn't like a slider setting. It was just a quality of life change. But you know what else is a really, really hard game from my youth? It's a game called Doom. And I tell you, I would not have gotten through and learned how to play that game if IDDQD and IDKFA did not exist.
God mode.
Exactly. And like there's something that I think a lot of elitist assholes kind of forget, is that not everybody learns the same. And like if you give somebody the ability to approach something in a way that they're not immediately smacked in the face for attempting to get into a thing, you've already got someone in the door. They're like, all right, fine, I'll give it a shot. And like you allow them to learn, then they'll probably stick with it. Like a buddy of mine picked up Elden Ring, and he was like, man, I don't know if I can go back to regular Souls games after Bloodborne, because Bloodborne gave me health back for hitting a guy, and I want to regenerate HP without having to worry about whether or not my dodging is perfect. And so I basically jumped into every one of his boss fights in the beginning of that game. I was like, just summon me, I'll be happy to help you. And the game scales you down, so if you're like way stronger than your friend, you are now their level. But bosses are ridiculously easy in that game. As soon as they have split attention, they're just cakewalks, even if you're super low level. And all of a sudden, it gave him the breathing room to learn the systems. And then I come back and he's like, I put 200 hours into this game. I've done everything on my own. I can't stop. And he went from those beginning hours of being like, I'm bouncing off of this so hard, to I can't stop playing this now that you helped me get my feet wet, so that I'm beyond the point where I don't understand what I'm doing. Now I understand all the choices that I'm making. The rest is just execution.
That's part of the difficulty wall to a lot of these Souls games, is they're not clear about what it is you're supposed to be doing, or how to play it, quote unquote correctly, or how to kind of master the mechanics. It's not clear. It's not upcoming. There's bad conveyance. And then when you ask other players, how do I do this? A lot of times you just get the response, get good. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but how do I do that? And then it becomes part of the difficulty wall, the fact that nobody's really telling you how to get better, not even the game or the other players. I did want to bring up the fact that I was playing another game recently, the Guardians of the Galaxy game that recently came out from Square Enix. And I don't know if it's the first game to do this, but I started playing it, and when I was picking my difficulty settings, it has an option to completely customize your own difficulty setting. I didn't do it. I just picked the normal because I didn't feel like fiddling with all the little bits. But like, I'm sure I went in and looked at what all the options were for creating your own difficulty settings, And it's awesome. You can decide whether or not there's more or less enemies, whether or not they have more or less health, whether or not you do more or less damage. Like, and you can create your own difficulty settings. And like, my first thought was, why does not every game have this? I mean, like, if you've already spent $60 for the game, why doesn't it have it? I mean, like, you could do things like, reward players who don't make it easier by like giving them certain achievements, or if you set the difficulty setting a certain thing, you're locked out of achievements, or whatever. And like me, once again, I didn't use it, but it also didn't affect my experience. I just went ahead and picked normal and started playing the game, and because of that, it didn't affect my experience. But for somebody else, it could have completely made that game playable where it was not playable for them before. So I was like, why does not every game have this?
Has anyone ever played Game Dev Tycoon?
Yes.
No,
I love that game.
Though.
As a quick aside, that's what your description and giving that sort of transparency, like moving all the sliders around where you have to increase your graphics budget or your audio design, and sort of tailoring it to the game you're trying to make or the experience. Like, yes, why don't we have this in every other game? Because I feel like it goes back to what we were saying before. It's like, play the game how you want to. And for me, in my experience in playing games, those are the ones I glom onto immediately, where it trusts me enough to learn the mechanics as I play, but also it doesn't hold my hand the entire time. And then if I want to go back on my new game or new game plus or however, beat the game 100%, and then I want to come back and tweak some of the settings, make it more difficult, put more health on the enemies or the bosses, or more enemies, and make modifiers to make my damage less. Like, give us that. Let us get to that. I guess like a sandbox mode, more or less. But I had a flashback of playing Game Dev Tycoon and trying to make the perfect game.
I think for me, it's like I wanna be able to play a game and experience the story and be able to look at the graphics and the scenery and the character design and all that stuff. I want to be able to play that through, get to the end, and then if I want to challenge myself, I'll go back, raise the difficulty. I won't have to worry about stopping and looking at anything this time. I'll just buzz right through it. But, as we have stated before, like with the Dark Souls games, there's not really an option to do that.
Yeah, just get good.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying.
So you all have brought up two thoughts. The first thing I wanted to mention is one of the things that is really not obvious about the Souls games is that there's a cultural assumption being made on the part of the Japanese developers that they don't realize they're doing. And this was actually like in several interviews in a number of Japanese magazines when talking about game design and bringing games to the West. Specifically, Enix talked about it a lot when making Dragon Quest, that single-player games are not played by yourself in Japan. It is assumed that when you buy a single-player game, when you get stuck, you talk to everyone else who's playing the game to see how they beat it. And
consult the community.
Exactly.
That's how I played Tomb Raider, actually.
Perfect.
I mean, back when we were kids, back in the NES days, that was the standard in America too. I mean, like the playground talk of how to beat different games and things like that was our culture. I remember talking about things I found in Zelda with my friends and things they found in Zelda, and that's how I beat Zelda.
Or get your older brother to show you that you can actually jump in Wind Waker, and you played the entire game without realizing that you can jump in Wind Waker. That was me.
So it's funny that you mention Zelda, because that was actually my next point. But what I was going to say about Souls games is the thing that finally tipped over in the West, because in my experience, all the people that I grew up around were like, "What? You can't do it on your own? You must suck at video games.
Jerks.
Don't buy a strategy guide. That's cheating. Stop sucking shit. Solve everything on your own." And that was kind of the thing that I'd always heard playing games, and that's the prevailing get good. That's that mentality made manifest. And that was actually something that they didn't realize was a problem. And so if you want to see, Rick mentioned Zelda, go back and play Zelda 1, and if you tell me if you know anyone that found the white sword on their own, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. Because imagine if you played Ocarina of Time for the N64, imagine that whole getting the big Goron sword quest, but it was hidden behind a bunch of invisible walls and shit. because there are like bushes that you have to burn that you don't know that you have to use that stuff on, and just a whole bunch of stuff that's just clues that literally don't exist in the game that can only be found if people are like crowdsourcing it together or you bought a guide.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we talk about games having difficulty sliders. I don't think there's a single Zelda game that does.
No.
I don't think so.
But people don't. I've never seen the internet get up in arms about the fact that Breath of the Wild, kicking people's asses at the beginning of that game and being super hard, because that was absolutely part of the public commentary at the time, saying that game needed a difficulty slider.
I didn't hear it as part of like the cultural zeitgeist, if you will, but like I had a lot of my friends who bought a Switch and bought that game who quit that game because of it. Who like they started and I would encourage them that like, hey, it doesn't stay that hard, I promise you. Like once you get into it, and and I'd encourage them to keep playing it or kind of show them some tricks that I found, which is I kind of think your point. It's like if we would show each other how to get through these games and how to play these games, which is more apparently the Japanese culture, then like maybe we wouldn't be hating on them so hard as far as their hard difficulty.
Yeah, because in my mind, I like the Zelda series and the Souls series are at the exact same difficulty level. They're just as hard as each other. You have to learn. They're action RPGs. You have to learn how those games go. You're going through big open environments until you find the key that moves you forward, and then you fight these super hard bosses that don't tell you what they're doing until they've killed you a couple times and you've learned their mechanics. You get something that makes you feel more powerful, and you move on until you keep doing that until you kill the final boss.
I agree with that.
I think the big difference is the levels of conveyance. Like I was saying, it's just like sometimes Zelda can hit you so hard with it that you're just like I get it point. Like, it's like, all right, Navi, like shut up, I get it. And then like with some of the Souls games, like I don't see myself ever reaching the point where I'm like, okay, you've given me enough tutorial, stop it, I get it. It's conveyance. And maybe if our culture was more of talking to each other about how to play these games and what we figured out, saying with each other, then we wouldn't have that wall.
I think too, our communities now, and as technology has progressed and we're all in Discord, hundreds of Discord servers connected all over the world, and we can consult others, find that right group of people, not the purists and the get-gooders, but have a core group that you can talk to people about. And the culture now where there's just so many people who are making content on the game and want to make guides and walkthroughs and strategies and any percents and speed runs and all that. I love and for Elden Ring how already just probably a few days ago somebody was up online. He's been doing a lot of like meme type videos and funny builds for the game, but he does open fight clubs where he opens up his world and he brings players in, and it's a 1v1 elimination style fight club where they just pick a site of grace and you spawn in. He has the whip item, the weapon, and he cracks the whip when he starts the match, and people just go at it. You don't get any heals. You can use pretty much anything else in your kit, and I think they banned bleed was like really the only other constituent, and some other like obviously broken, abused mechanics, but like the community already coming out in the first month of launch with so many different creative ideas of how to join, how to raid, how to help people. And for you, Ryan, where you were like, yeah, summon me. Like, let me help you, like, get used to this game and try it out. If you feel like the difficulty spike is too high, and since we can't adjust it, having immediate access for multiplayer, and it's admittedly a bit limited for Elden Ring. You join in, you help them beat a world boss of a certain area, and then they disappear. At first, I kind of felt like that was limiting, but then as I got into it more and I learned more about the game and over time fell in love with it, it feels like a really just seamless and perfect way for our communities now to jump in and teach other players, because like you said, the conveyance isn't there. The game very much relies on you to pay attention and to pick up subtle cues and seemingly mundane conversations, and from that you get that joy. You get that this sparks joy. this does not spark joy. The sweet YouTube lady who teaches, if you know what I'm talking about, you get the reference. But I love that. I love that now our communities are, the ones that I've joined, I'm on the Elden Ring Discord as well. Just, I throw pings out there every now and again when I get stuck on a hard boss, and they just helped me earlier today after I got back home. It was really cool. Like, a couple people pinged me and they're like, hey, yeah, I'll help you out. And it makes it to where you just don't feel like you're beating your head against the wall by yourself for so long that you start to it disenfranchises you, and it takes you out of the experience of like, well, this is just a dumb game and I don't want to play anymore. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. I think wikis made Dark Souls 1 what it is. I think if like specific wikis hadn't been popular around the time that game came out, because you got to remember when Dark Souls 1 came out, wikis were new. Like, that wasn't something that we normally saw for a lot of niche special things. We had Wikipedia, but individual wikis were not that common. And like, the Dark Souls wiki blew up because it allowed people to have this false impression that they did it entirely on their own when someone else filled out the wiki. And in my experience, those are most of the get-gooders. Like, they'll be like looking it up in the wikis, still solving it on your own somehow, even though it's literally someone else giving you the answer. But I love it. Like, I wiki wander all day. I didn't know that nearly every Souls game has like 7 endings. If you do, there's like secret side quests to get the secret endings that actually give you like the real events as to what's supposed to happen and all this crazy stuff. I missed the true ending to Bloodborne the first time around because you can actually miss the items that you need to get in order to get the final boss fight. And I think that wikis have made that series popular in the West. Same with another super hard game series, Monster Hunter.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think that Monster Hunter again, in that same vein, people in Japan loved Monster Hunter. There were like the PSP got popular in Japan when they released Monster Hunter for it.
I had a PSP when I was in the Navy, and one of the very few games I had for it was Monster Hunter. But I was also the only person who was playing Monster Hunter on when I was on deployment. I was on USS Enterprise for 6 months, playing Monster Hunter by myself on a PSP, and I didn't really get it. Like, I didn't get the hype. Like, I played it because I had it, but like playing that game, I never really got like a feeling of, oh yeah, I really like this game. I was just playing it because it was the game I had. Whereas Monster Hunter World came out, and a bunch of my friends were all playing Monster Hunter World, and I was like, I don't know, Monster Hunter's not really my thing. And they were like, please come play with us. And so I grabbed a giant hammer and started playing with them. And that was one of my favorite games after that. Like, playing with my friends and having them share the experience and go, oh, you use this for this and you do this for this. And you, this is the strategy for this monster. And instead of, beating my head against it by myself, it was, a community experience. And that's what made that game great for me.
Yeah, absolutely. The smooth online functionality of Monster Hunter World was game changing. And one of my favorite things to watch are old videos that people used to take, most of which were on, flip phone cameras at the time. But people on Japanese trains would specifically put Monster Hunter stickers on the back of their PSPs. So if they were playing and you walked up past somebody that was playing Monster Hunter, you'd whip out your PSP and you'd ask them if they were getting off soon so that you could kill a monster together before one of you hit your stop.
That's so cool. I love that.
And that was Monster Hunter in Japan. It was this very communal thing. Like, you don't play video games by yourself. And yeah, and like, I know I mentioned Dragon Quest before. Like, if you've never played Dragon Quest 1, look up the
Dragon Warrior over here, I believe they called it.
Yeah.
So if you've played Dragon Warrior for the NES, that's the game he's talking about.
Yeah, I want to say like the first 6 or 7 games in the West were called Dragon Warrior.
Mm-hmm. Dragon Warrior was one of the small stack of NES games I did have, so I played a lot of that game.
Yeah, but you like look up getting the best armor in the game. It's hidden inside of a poisonous tile in like the center of the map that's entirely by itself that you'd never know it was there. You literally have to like click on an invisible treasure chest on the world map to loot it. Stuff like that. But you can't get through the game without it. And that's kind of part of it. I'm trying to think, what other games are there that are so hard?
Well, for a while they were calling everything like the Dark Souls of blank. Like, though, this is the 2D Dark Souls. Oh, this is the Dark Souls of this type. This is the Dark. So like they were taking any game that was hard and calling it Dark Souls. Like they were calling Cuphead Dark Souls, and they were calling Hollow Knight Dark Souls. But I mean, I think, me personally, I don't think the difficulty is what makes the Souls game. I think, and I take this with a grain of salt, because like I said, I don't play the games, but what attracts me to the games and makes me want to play them is the story and the setting that they don't just hand to you, that you can unfold. So like, taking it back to Dragon Warrior, I remember playing that game and hearing about this guy Edric over and over again, but like they don't give you his story outright. Like it's all like fed to you in these little pieces, like finding Edric's armor and like so, and you kind of unfold the story of Edric as you play. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce his name. I only ever read it. And like other games like that, like that's the thing about the Souls games, is they don't hand you the story. You have to kind of go find it.
Yeah, go get it.
And I think other games like that should be what's being compared to Dark Souls and Demon Souls, instead of just, oh, this game was really hard, so it's like Dark Souls.
Yeah. Well, so do you know the story behind why the story is that way in the Souls games?
I don't.
Miyazaki, the director of the series, had a bunch of picture books in English, and so he didn't know what the story was. So he had to try and piece together the story piecemeal by what the impression he got from the image, and then his sort of school age translation skills of English to Japanese. And so that's why, in order to get the backstory for everything in the games, you have to look at an item's description picture and turn on the description. Literally inspired by, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Reverse engineering narrative out of pictures.
That's fantastic.
That is one thing I actually did want to bring up for this conversation today, as I was preparing myself and learning more about sort of the production and the history of Miyazaki sort of leaving Oracle and moving to FromSoft, that was the case. Like, he was handed a raw deal, or he approached, rather. He came to From Software and he was like, hey, like, I heard about this game. It's kind of the press was, I guess at the time, it was already kind of a flop, and they weren't sure what to do with it. And so him sort of piecemealing it back together, and it had a really bad launch in Japan over East. But when it got picked up, or one of the other companies who brought it to the West exploded. And like, from, I think it wasn't Demon Souls. It was the very first one. It was Knights, or we mentioned it earlier.
Oh, Kingsfield.
Kingsfield was the one I think he joined on, and then proceeded to, obviously is renowned for all of the Souls and his direction for it. I thought it was interesting because to me it sounded like a revival story. It was like a redemption for them when Miyazaki came over, and kind of in the same respect, like limited conveyance, he was kind of handed all these different pictures, and he was like, okay, I think we can make something from this. And now we have this whole legacy of, I think historically, like where you say, oh, it's a Souls type game. It's revered for its difficulty and the challenge of it, but just how it was kind of where I took interest. And I think you in the very start, you said it was this sort of alternate reality. And I think a lot of the games do play on the fact that there's this cycle of undeath, which is so much of, I think, these kind of difficult games where you just keep dying and you keep coming back and you beat your head against the wall until you figure it out and you progress. The game sort of captures that idea, right? And that is the narrative, the story of this like hero or this prophecy, some like revered person comes in and sort of breaks that cycle, or just tilts the scales. Like you said, all the different endings, like they make it whatever you want it to be, or if you found all the secrets, unlock the true hidden ending, the double secret hidden ending, like,
yeah,
just how it came to be. I wanted to bring that up, and just thought that was an interesting little tidbit about their lore, about the history of the games.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, it's funny you mentioned the lore, because the story is broad strokes the same in every game.
Right.
There is a status quo. you are here to defeat this evil and maintain the status quo. And oh, if you find all of the secrets, the secret ending is the status quo is evil, and you entirely upend the status quo.
Everyone's a liar.
Yeah, and I think that I like the most about Elden Ring is that you get that without having to hunt for it. But what I love is when you get to that point halfway through the game when it's like, oh yeah, by the way, everyone knows that this is a lie, but all of a sudden they now know that you're powerful enough to change it. No one ever actually thought that you would start killing off lords, but now you're making everybody sweat. And so like certain NPCs that are friendly towards you start like trying to kill you because they're like, no, we're trying to maintain the status quo. You're trying to stop it.
Yeah, no, like get with the program. Like, what are you doing, foul tarnished?
Yeah, exactly. And then if you finish the game, if you just beat the final boss without going through any of the secret quest lines, you still end up maintaining the status quo. And they're like, woo, that was lucky. But if you go through, there are actually like 3 different side quests that you can go down that are upending the status quo in different ways that I rather liked a lot. I haven't finished the game yet. I'm nearly in the last area, but yeah.
Likewise, yeah. I feel like I'm close, but that also probably means I have 3 or 4 more bosses to beat.
Yeah. Well, how do I say it without spoiling it? If all of a sudden you're in the floating islands from Sonic 3, then you know you're in the final area.
Okay, I'm not there yet.
Oh, you just made it to the city then?
No. After the city, but I've heard reference of this Sonic 3 floating city, and I am not there quite yet.
Yep. You have 2 more areas to go through after the icy lands that you're in now.
Awesome. More pain ahead.
Yep. Oh man. I got to that midpoint where they're like, you need to get to this city. You need to become an Elden Lord. And then like halfway through the game, like they've been hinting at it the whole time, like nearly from the beginning, like, oh, I guess things aren't what they seem. Guess you might have to do something about that. And this point that they made you feel like was the end point the whole time is really the midway point of the game. And then you're like, oh god, okay, come on. Everybody in the struggle bus, choo choo. This is a bus that goes choo choo now. Because I'm also a bus choo-choo build.
It's medieval, or you know, like it's steampunk.
It's the only horn they have. That's fine.
Yeah, well, you do get killed by trumpeters, and they were the most annoying thing in the world.
Oh, the bubbles! So many bubbles.
I never thought that I would be killed by a bubble wand.
So, going off of some other difficult games and ones that we've played that. I personally, I've done a lot. I'm pretty much almost every Zelda game, and it's only now that you compare the two and you sort of draw the similarities that I see it, and I very much agree that the experience is very much the same. You figure it out, you power up, you grab all the different items from around the world. But I've played a lot of other sort of the genre, I guess more recently defined as roguelike or roguelite, and the dungeon crawler sort of procedurally generated games, kind of like Diablo 3. I play a lot of Gungeon, Enter the Gungeon, Celeste.
Hades is a really popular one right now.
Which one?
Hades.
Hades, that too.
I've been digging on Hades recently. Anybody who's been listening to the podcast knows that I recently got a new computer, and that's why we were able to do season 3 of the podcast. And with my new computer, I got Game Pass for free.
Excellent
which means
choice.
There's a lot of games I've been playing just because I got them on Game Pass. So, like when I was talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, that was on Game Pass. When
it is, yeah.
And then Hades, I've been playing it because it's on Game Pass. So,
yeah, I love Hades. I sat down to play that game when it came out, and I think that maybe because I played a shit ton of Bastion. I was ready for Supergiant's next game, whatever it was, and when I finally got my hands on Hades, I actually killed Hades on my first run.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Yeah. I was like, man, this game's really easy. You have to kill him 9 more times. Oh. All right. Keep going. Oh. This is going to get harder, isn't it? Yes, it is. Oh, thanks, you big jerk. I got really lucky with my drops. I had laser swords the first time. Like we were talking about Zelda. Every time that I swung my sword, it shot laser beams out, so I never had to be in danger in my first run.
What game are we talking about again?
Hades.
Why'd everybody get quiet? I just asked a question.
Oh,
Jeez.
I thought there was a follow-up.
I was, I was wondering if
Baron.
like I thought you had already been playing this game and like maybe you hadn't heard about laser
no.
swords or something. Or
I've played it. It just yeah, played it a lot.
With the laser swords, right? Like
I don't know
at that.
the like it shot wind or something. There's some effect like shot out of my sword every time that I swung it in my first playthrough.
Sure.
And I was like, this.
Yeah, I'm not that good. So like I died to like the bomb throwing twins during my first run, like really early on. And then I was like, oh, okay, so that's how this game works, and I'm just gonna keep dying until I get stronger and stronger and get gifts from the gods, and yeah, eventually I get a little bit further each time. That's one thing I will pride myself on is I make it further in every run. Like I have not had a run where I die sooner than I did previously. Like I am getting further in, like I'm making it for more rooms every run. It's just it hasn't. It's slow going.
I swear I roll a d20 every time. It's like, okay, you're only going to make it 2 rooms this time. Cool. All right. Whatever I got to do.
And it's luck based. Like, not every run you get the magic wind scythe swords, or, sometimes you'll come in and you'll get 3 ridiculously overpowered items or combination that's like, oh, this is now I get to play the game. Now it's not so difficult. Gungeon specifically, you can play 100 different times, get 100 different runs, and every single one it feels unique and different because some guns synergize and you'll get secondary or tertiary effects when you link different items together. And that comes from playing the game and coming back, getting a little better every time. And the difficulty really is there as like, you may beat it in your first go, but that's not to say you've completed the game by any means. You have to go back and you have to kill the past of every character. That's sort of the lore of the Gungeon, is it holds the power to eliminate, maybe something you regret from your past. And each time, every character you play, you can beat the game, and then you have to figure out how to be able to kill your own past, and then you go back and beat it again, and you get like the final fight, like your own. You get to redo something in the character's life, which as a concept I thought was really fun and made me want to keep coming back for the replayability and
pretty deep.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I replayed Binding of Isaac and how many times I've been like, fuck this run, and then like how many times I've been like, man, this run is great. Like that's just rogue-like games are just like a matter of praying to RNGesus and hoping that you made the correct sacrifices. And yeah, that's just kind of what those games are like, which is, I think, is a big difference between the difficulty in roguelike games and difficulties in Souls-like games, because I mean, a lot of the difficulty, I mean, like I can play Binding of Isaac and get a run where that game is easy AF based off of what items I get or what rooms end up getting generated, whereas Souls games, it's going to be the same thing every time. Like I will not get a lucky pull against a boss to where that boss fight is easier. Like that's going to be that same boss every time.
Or you just use magic and win the game.
That's how I play D&D.
Exactly.
One of the things I love the most about Elden Ring is how it made the arcane magic so good. Or you just use dragon magic, finding out which bosses are vulnerable to Scarlet Rot, and just being like, oh, hey, by the way, I killed this rot dragon in Caelid, which means, hi, I win this fight now. Because this just tracks on you and gives you a poison that is so bad, even though you're a boss, you will die in 5 seconds.
Put him in the
Thank
microwave.
You for showing up to the me show. Yeah, I will say, like, mentioning roguelikes. Even though I had the world's luckiest draws the first time I played Hades, the subsequent run I died in the first zone. And I was like,
yep.
The D20 roll, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and then, like, Enter the Gungeon has been like the same way. Binding of Isaac, I didn't beat it until all of a sudden I had homing tears that did a bajillion damage. But like, yeah, with Souls games, I know a lot of people that like picked up Elden Ring that had previously played Souls games, and I was that guy where you saw the tree sentinel as soon as you walk out, and you're like, oh, I know that I'm supposed to come back here and fight you when I'm like 30 levels higher. But no, I also know that if I'm just a relentless shithead, I will win eventually. And so I love like the 6 hour long streams of people doing the same thing on Twitch, of just being like, no, I'm going to master these mechanics. I'm going to master these dodge roll timings so that I beat you as a level 1 clothless wretch with a club.
I think I want to get that game, stream it on Twitch, but every time I stream it on Twitch, my title will be, "Do you want to watch a grown man cry?"
Yes. Subscribe now.
I mean,
Subscribe now. I switch over to subscriber only when I start crying.
yeah, all of your emotes are just you being sad.
I have one, actually.
Yeah, but now you need more with different levels. It'd be like one of those posters at the doctor, like, how are you feeling, with like the different faces.
Oh no.
And then like one where it's just like you crying but doing the Elden Ring sign. Like,
Yeah.
oh man.
I'm there. I'm the first day I'm there.
Damn it. I'm going to have to do it, aren't I? Oh no.
Yeah, I'm curious too for this group with the sort of media and like when you get hyped up for a new game that's coming out or you play
Kirby
a game.
in the Forgotten Lands.
Yep.
I cannot.
Poyo.
Look, I know.
Poyo.
I know we're new friends, but like I'm a Kirby stan to the hardcore. And as of recording this podcast, that game comes out tomorrow. I am fucking pumped for Kirby.
The DMs are open.
It's out in 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yes.
Specifically.
Well,
Say it again.
I'm still a physical type. I still want the physical copy of the game. I'm still that person. So I'll be heading to the game store tomorrow to pick up my copy. That, and if I downloaded it tonight, there's no way I would do work tomorrow. Which would not be good because I'd still be clocked in. I might lose my job. So, so it's a good thing I have to wait until after work to go pick up the game. But then I've got all weekend to play it. So,
Yeah, you can no life it. My question was, when it comes to new games or games that you've discovered that you really enjoy and you start really getting in the meat and potatoes of it, do you guys like watching other streamers play games? Do you like to experience, like I think Baron, you were saying, like I like to play the game first and get into it and get your own take before you seek it and get the opinions of its fan base.
Which actually really worked in my benefit for one game in particular.
Which was
Cyberpunk 2077. Because I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, oh, it's bad, it's glitchy. And I'm like, and then when I start reading these reviews, I'm like, what glitches are you guys talking about? But it worked perfectly for me. The story was wonderful. Cyberpunk 2020 was the second TTRPG I ever played. So when this came out, it was just like, what? This is great. Oh, and this was back in like, oh man, it had to have been in like the early 90s too. So yeah, I've been hype about Cyberpunk for years, and then this game starts coming out, and I'm losing my shit. It's the whole reason why I got a computer, played it. It was great, and then I started watching people.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was fun seeing everybody else's take. It actually introduced me to a build that is, at the time, so OP that when I used it, I didn't like the character anymore.
So what I'm hearing, Baron, that we need to play Cyberpunk Red.
Oh yeah, I played Cyberpunk Red.
I own the book. I haven't had a chance to play with anybody yet.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, but it's good.
If you're volunteering to run it, we will totally do a actual play for the podcast for Cyberpunk.
So I have a standing rule with all tabletop RPGs that I had to make because I was the perpetual GM for my group, where I said if someone suggests a game, you're running it. Period. You can't suggest a game and then be like, well, I want to be a player. Never. People stop asking me about games. But so I'm saying we should play Cyberpunk Red, which means I'd be happy to run Cyberpunk Red. I will say the only thing I didn't really like about Cyberpunk 2077 is I just wanted to be a media. I was kind of sad that I was forced to be a solo,
Oh, 2077. Yeah, I was kind of bummed out. I will say that as soon as I heard about Cyberpunk 2077, I was like, I want to be a nomad. And I was like, because it was like that's the only one that makes sense to me, or like a street or a solo.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was like it came out and it was like, oh, nomad. It's like one of the things. A fucking what? And in my opinion, is probably the best storyline in the game.
Absolutely.
It was so good, so good.
That's what I've heard.
Mhm.
I had a rig that I built with these two hands, these tarnished hands, and it could not. I tried. I minimized all my settings, like played it on potato quality to try and get to the story that I heard was so good. And last year I just upgraded my rig to a pre-built that runs like a dream, butter smooth. I do need to go back and I need to play Cyberpunk
especially now that they've got all of those upgrades and stuff like that they've downloaded in there.
Oh yeah.
I hear
the quality of
1.5 makes it a different game entirely. As far
I'm
as...
going to go back and play it again because there's even different endings. There's different scenes. It's like almost a new game.
It's like a whole new game.
Yeah.
Whole new game.
When 2020, the happening happened. My wife and I were supposed to go to Japan finally, and then nobody was going anywhere, and so I was like, well, I got this plane ticket money. NVIDIA just put out these new video cards, and so I bought a pre-built that has a 3090 in it because I was like, if I'm going to be stuck inside, every single thing that I play is going to look gorgeous. I can save back up for the plane ticket to Japan, which, by the way, they still have not opened up for tourists.
For US or just anywhere?
Anywhere. The only way that you can get into the country is if you have a work visa or a student visa, and that just happened a month ago.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. So I also jumped into Cyberpunk day one, and I was like, all right, let's get this going. I'm ready. Give me that Keanu Reeves. You want Keanu Reeves in your head? And I said, that's the only thing I've ever wanted.
You could call it pandering, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, do you want to slowly become Keanu Reeves against your will? And I said, who said it's against my will? Slowly become Keanu Reeves.
Purely consensual. I do think it's funny, how there are sex scenes and everything like that. I was kind of doing the math on some of the stuff in there, and you get to fool around with a 70-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Representation.
Yeah.
There we go.
I don't know if you guys saw the interview with Keanu where someone told him he was the #1 requested person to be modded in the game to have a sex scene with. And, he was so excited. He literally went, yes!
What?
On the couches, and then they were like, well, you can't. And he was like, oh. But, he was like, that's just, the most flattering thing I've ever heard, my entire life.
But hold on, though. There is kind of a sex scene with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah,
Yep,
it's just
literally.
your character.
Is he filming? What is it?
With
What is
that
it?
70-year-old woman. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
yeah.
you're splitting hairs at that point.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely am. Yeah.
Baron, I'm on your side. 100%.
There's no question. We just got to wait till we get the Futurama technology where we can just start cloning celebrities.
Oh, right.
And adding them, into our daily
Oh,
lives.
man. Lucy Lou's going to be pissed.
Yeah, and then the robots took over, and that's when the AI reigned supreme. All the robot Keanu from Cyberpunk with their massively enhanced genitalia.
Oh, massively.
that game too, Cyberpunk, just the prospect of all of the cybernetic enhancements and upgrades as a prominent feature was really intriguing, but also a really scary, makes you think.
What's funny,
how far away are we from
before
that?
this continues to go too far away from this point, speaking of massive,
it is getting kind of dirty.
Speaking of massive genitalia, if you want a shirt with massive genitalia on it, T-Villain is a t-shirt site where you can find killer limited edition shirt being sold for $13 for only 24 hours. The following 24 hours will feature a new design and so on and so forth. They choose the most ingenious designs that reflect everything evil and villainy, as well as works pertaining to anything artistic, pulp style, lowbrow, pop culture, TV, movies, music, video games, comics, etc. All things cool and evil, basically. There will be a link in the description down below where you can check out T-Villain today.
You really, really should have told me about that because I just ordered a t-shirt. I
had to keep it a secret because that was the one affiliate Baron wanted more than anything, so I went out and pursued it, and we officially have the affiliate of T-Villain now.
That's so fucking awesome. One of my favorite shirts I got from them was a shirt that says Satanic Panic on it, and it came with a set of dice.
Yes.
That was the smoothest goddamn segue.
Yeah.
I've ever heard.
He's a master. He's a master at the affiliate segues.
I'm into it.
So where's that link? Hang on. Wait,
it's not available for you just yet, but when this episode is published, it'll be in the description of the episode.
Got it.
But back on to the implications and subject of genitalia. These were actually part of the original Cyberpunk 2020 game.
Yep.
It was the Midnight Lady and the Mr. Stud. They were both implants that would enhance the experience of a genital sexual experience.
Now this game is hard.
I mean, yeah, and wet. But yeah.
Wait, like the video game Wet?
Yes, it's a lot like
okay.
that. Yeah, it's
Okay.
identical actually.
Okay.
To go back to the original question of how we handle when we hear a new game coming out the works before this becomes Cyberpunk episode take 2.
I was sticking with genitals. I know more about genitals.
You did promise that you were going to work pornography into every episode from now on. So
I did.
So there is a format.
But to go back to the original question, for me, it depends on the type of video game. So,
I
like,
thought you were going to say genitals.
Persona 5, for example, I started playing Persona 5, and I was like, I'm going to go into this game blind. I've heard that it's, like, a really cool game. I've never played a Persona game before. And after I got through the first week, I shut it off, started over, and looked up a guide. Because with how many things there are to do, and how long the game is, I knew I wasn't going to do multiple playthroughs, but I wanted to experience everything. So I looked up a 100% run as far as what to do each day in order to get 100% in that game. And I played that game that way. And I didn't feel cheated out of any experience, because that's the thing about someone telling me exactly how to play a game. Like, you need to play exactly like this. I feel kind of cheated, but I didn't feel that in Persona. Like, when it came to the combat, I still played with the characters I wanted. I still played the way I wanted, but I was able to experience everyone's story, and I didn't miss out on anything for that run.
So you recognized pretty early on, like where you said you turned it off, reset, started over, that, I made some key mistakes in my decisions, and quickly determined like it would be better off for me to try again and start fresh, because I did that with Elden Ring. I played probably about 2.5 hours. I picked the wrong class. I was trying to play just a hack and slash barbarian, as I do, just want to hit things really, really hard, and I got that, but I had to switch to hero, and I immediately had a much better experience playing the game. Was that kind of the case? And then, like you said, you went and consulted, like you looked up guides and kind of got a better track in mind?
Pretty much, because Persona will literally lock you out of things if you don't choose the right things that you want to do each day. So in Persona, like, you are a Japanese high schooler, and you have like your morning and your afternoon, and like you can unlock evenings if you do the right things, and like you can unlock extra time if you do the right things. So yeah, so I started playing the game. I actually, when I say I got a week in, I'm talking about like an in-game week, but it was actually longer than that. I beat the first castle, if that's what they call it. And it's been so long since I played Persona 5. That, and right after I beat that first boss, Persona 5 Royal came out. So it actually wasn't a hard decision to start over. I think I was actually talking to you about this, Ryan, at MagFest, about how I had just beaten the first boss and then Royal came out. And I think you gave me the advice to just start over and play Royal. Which I did. Because I bought Royal because I was really enjoying the Persona 5. And when I started playing Royal, I looked up a guide and I was like, I'm going to 100% this sucker.
Was that January 2020?
Yeah.
The Happening.
That was right before The Happening. It's back before we all knew it was coming. We're at a great big convention surrounded by tons of people. So it was right before the crisis.
Yeah. Because and for those that don't know, if you don't play Persona 5 Royal correctly, you miss out on the DLC. It will literally lock you out of the content you bought if you don't play the game right.
Yep. And then you have to start over and try again.
Yep.
You have to do a new game plus to try over to get it.
Wow.
And Persona 5 Royal helped me a lot in the beginning of the crisis because it gave me something to do and be very diligent with during the crisis. Yeah. But like I said, that's just one example. So like I was saying, it depends on the type of game. Other games like Kirby, like I said, I'm very excited for Kirby. Other than the demo, which I did play the demo that came out just because I couldn't wait anymore. Like I was tired of them throwing ads at me. I was like, I need some Kirby now.
I see him up there in the top left too.
Oh yeah, he's up there. And that's not even including the blanket that my daughter got me for my birthday that's covered in all the different Kirby powers. Yeah, I needed some Kirby, so I played the demo. But other than that, I'm going in blind. Like I haven't looked up anything as far as Kirby goes, and I won't. Even if I feel like I've missed something, I will go all the way through that game to the end without quote-unquote spoiling myself, because I know Kirby, and I know there will be hidden stuff, but finding that hidden stuff will be a little treat and reward for me. Like, I don't want somebody to tell me where all the hidden stuff is.
Yeah. I would say for me, I go through all the marketing material. One of the big games that I'm really, really excited for is the House of the Dead remake on Switch, because I love light gun games.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept, in their Discord, because I'm like, you guys haven't answered my question. Is this game going to support the Joy-Con gyroscope so that I can feel like I'm actually shooting at the zombies on the screen? And 100 people finally asked the question, and one of the developers responded. They were like, yeah, you can, absolutely, we're going to do that. We're sorry we didn't put that in the marketing material. And Street Fighter, I'm a big fighting game fan, huge fighting game fan. And those games, there is no, they're kind of in the same way. Again, because of the Japanese communal aspect of them, it's expected that you learn that with other people. That there's no way that you can't just sit down and play training mode and expect to learn how to play a fighting game. You have to become part of the community to do it. So that I try to absorb everything, and I'm ultra hype for Street Fighter 6 based on what we know about all of the games leading up to it. It could potentially be, if they do it right, the best Street Fighter ever made. So
it very much depends on the title, and in this case, you're a big analog fighter, like the cabinet style, fighting games. So you're going to be following that, press release by press release, update by update. You're already in the forums. You're all in.
Yeah, 100%. I have arcade machines in the house, and I'm getting another one. I built one myself. I have a Japanese Vuelix. And I'm trying to get my hands on a Versus City, which was a Japanese machine where they put two monitors back to back so that each person basically got their own desk's worth of space to go head to head rather than being next to each other.
Shoulder to shoulder, yeah.
Yeah, because there is a comic called High Score Girl in Japan. I think they got the anime got a Netflix release.
Yeah, I saw the animation on Netflix.
It's so good, because it's entirely about Japanese kids in the 90s and sort of them living their lives through arcade games. And they licensed all of the arcade games that they're referencing. So it's not Strant Fodder. It's literally Street Fighter. The one
Curb Brawler.
Yeah, exactly. The one kid's angel on his shoulders, literally Guile, telling him that he needs to do his best. I love it. But they mention in that side-by-side cabinets in Japan were called single-player cabinets, because there was a snowball's chance in hell that two people would sit down next to each other and play a competitive game. So whenever, arcade operators put a fighting game into a cabinet where the controls were shoulder to shoulder, people would just line up and wait for the person to get off of the player one controls to get on, because, people would, when they lost, would get so violent that they didn't want to be next to that sort of energy.
Isn't that part of what the culture, putting a quarter on, you had next? For somebody who's playing a game currently, and hey, I'll put my money on now. I'll take next game.
Yeah, quarters matches. We used to do that in my hometown with DDR.
Yes.
Pull out a Sharpie, put your initial on the quarter so that you knew where your spot in line was, and put it up on the screen. And quarters matches were so big that when Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting came out on the 360, that was how the online matchmaking queue system worked. Is they put a little virtual quarter up. It was called quarters mode. For that reason, I loved it.
And then Baron, did we get your take? What you prefer when your new favorite game's coming out, or one you're excited to get into? Is there anybody's opinion you hold in high esteem over your own?
It really depends on the game, honestly. I have a certain group of, like, I don't necessarily have anybody online that I go to for video games.
Needs.
I mean, oh shit, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I know
shit.
you have literally played games because Neebs has.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You're welcome.
That's it. Yeah, thank you, Neebs. Yeah, Neebs. I guess outside of my friends, then yeah, the Neebs gaming channel I watch because I just think they're hilarious. But yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, I have so many games that they've played, and it's like, you know what, I want to get into that, and I talk like a group of friends into playing.
Yeah,
that's the whole reason why we played
Neebs.
Ark.
You talk about Neebs the way I talk about Game Grumps, which is saying something.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, a fellow grump, a fellow lovely.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, guys, I got to jump out early. Much like the Guile angel on my shoulder would say, I have to go home and be a family man. So thank you all so much for having me.
Before you leave, if anybody liked what you had to say and they want to find you when you're on the internet, where can they do that?
You can find me on Twitter at digital_lozenge. Also on Twitch, I am digital_lozenge. My YouTube channel is digital_lozenge. I play a variety of different games, retro games, also arcade games, streaming directly from my arcade machines, most Monday and Tuesday nights after my wife has finished with her horror game streaming. And mainly on Twitter, I post weird video game esoterica that I get from Japanese Twitter. So...
And this is an older thing and probably not the thing he wants me to promote. But if you check out his YouTube channel, he plays through Volgar, and it's hilarious. I love going back and watching those videos over and over again. So check out his Volgar playthrough.
One of the next things I'm going to be working on my YouTube channel is making videos for how to modernize setups as tech dies, because there's a lot of people making devices to replace broken arcade machine parts, but they don't put tutorials up on how they're supposed to be used. Like, literally, I bought an interface for one of them, and the guys sent me a printout of how to hook it up that isn't on their site and describes a feature that they don't describe anywhere. They say, email us directly to see how to use this. And I was like, this is the most important thing to me. Why do you not have this? So stuff
Very
like that.
Very exclusive. Oh.
Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, so that's what I do. Also, very occasionally, you can find me on the Hit Save Twitch channel. I'm friends with the folks over there. They are game preservationists. The first stream that I did with them was for the Game Boy e-reader. They made an open source project so that people could scan their e-reader cards that are extremely rare while those cards are still in thick plastic. And then the last thing that I did with them was for open source game preservation projects. They are going to be putting money towards people that are doing things like reverse engineering the Sega Genesis sound chip and cool shit like that. So that's me. Again, thank you all so much for having me on. Enjoy.
Thanks for coming. It's always a pleasure.
I love it. Enjoy talking about things that are hard and games that are hard. Have a good one, y'all.
All right, you too.
Take care. And then there were 3.
But yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about. I think we kind of dunked on Souls games, for lack of a better term, for a while for their difficulty. But I think there's a reason they're popular, right? And it's not just because they're hard. People wouldn't. I mean, there are hard games out there that don't get the love that Souls games do. They're hard and they're also rewarding. Like, if you're willing to pound your head against your wall for long enough, the reward is not just that you eventually win, but like I was saying before, you unlock more of the story, you unlock more of the lore, and they're willing to give you, you know, rewards for beating that boss.
Yeah, I think that's really has been my experience, and coming to the game late for the Soulsborne genre. It is such a specific feeling where I approach a game and I'm not immediately immersed in it, or I have to get through the tutorial, and then I have to learn more about the basic mechanics, and I got to talk to 17 other people before I get to the part of the game that lets me play how I want to play. My experience in Elden Ring immediately, where that first feeling, I mean, it's shot for shot, it's very similar how the start of Breath of the Wild, how you open the gate, you come out of the tomb, and there's the whole world before you, or at least Limgrave, and you go out there and you see, oh, there's so much more, and there's so much to where you reach a wall and you get frustrated and you can't find a way around it. Go somewhere else, like take a breath, take a beat, walk around, look for some other caves, some other dungeons. You'll end up finding a bunch of cool stuff to use, and then come back, and then boom, like I'm right back in. Like I beat that. I got over the hurdle. I beat that boss. I spent hours and hours trying to do it, and where the reward comes in, like I don't get that a lot anymore in a lot of other new games that I've tried. A lot of stuff is gimmicky. There's gotcha games, and there's all kinds of other like games you can beat in 2 hours, and like that's it. Like you get the whole story, and there's no replayability. It's a solid game, don't get me wrong, not to bash anybody else, but I come back to Elden Ring and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I came back with like a samurai Bushido build, this would be so much easier. Like, oh my gosh, like I got 3 spell books back to back. I should come back here when I make a mage. And it's feeding my excitement all over again to like want to play. And then it also gets me thinking like, well, gosh, maybe the other Souls games weren't, like maybe if I came back and tried something else, it would be better, or I would get a different, experience out of it, or I'd feel better and more rewarded for trying something else. I think too, where it puts on player agency a lot, and it rewards you for being versatile. You can try and do the shirtless club wretch run and perfect the game, no hit, however you want to play it, but there is so much customization, and there are so many different weapons and armors and spells and sorceries and dragon spells, and like it can be overwhelming at times, but I've loved it. And like I'm about 110 hours in. Like this is one of the only games I've actually written a Steam review for. Not that my 2 cents is worth more than any of the other average Joes players out there. But I felt so compelled to like give my take, and why I was so excited to join the podcast when you asked me to, come in and talk about it. That feeling, I think game designers, and I mentioned it in my review, it's been like watching the fall of the Titans the last 5-10 years, where we see these games get overhyped and they come out and they're half finished, broken, not what they were advertised as. And there's been this like residual air of like bitterness, and it's so like everyone's so quick to put a torch to companies now when they don't deliver the game they promised. And I feel like Elden Ring also kind of knocked it out of the park. They delivered. There's so much to this game. It may not be for you, it may not be for everybody, but for what it is out of the gate in its first month, I can't say enough about it. I am in love with this game, and I told somebody the other day too, I'm doing Young Gunner a service, and if I could go back and tell him when I was a kid, hang on, because good games are coming. Like, it's worth it. Like, stick around. Just wait and see what they come up with next. This was the game I wanted to play. This was the game that I have been dying to play for years. And it's just, yeah, it's however much you can take and the difficulty and the frustration without waxing too long about it.
This is why I really appreciate the comparison between Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild. Because for me, Breath of the Wild was that game. Playing the original Zelda game, that game was all about exploration. And, they literally drop you on a screen. They don't even give you a sword. They're just like, go. There's a cave over there. There's a couple different... You just go play. And Zelda games hadn't been that since the original. And then Breath of the Wild came out. And they give you a little bit of tutorial on the island, right? I think you have to have that in order to play the game properly. But at the same time, they're just like, they don't tell you what to do other than go fight Ganon. And if you want to, you can do that. You can go straight to Ganon. Most likely you'll get your ass kicked. You'll get completely destroyed, which is what encourages you to go explore if you immediately go straight to Ganon.
and it's right at the center of the map. It's always in focus, and you can just see the spiraling columns of shadows. Like, oh yeah, that's the final boss. Like, I should go there when I feel damn well and ready, but I have plenty of time, despite what Princess Zelda tells you.
From what I've been told about Elden Ring, because I haven't played it myself, is they don't give you any objectives in Elden Ring either, other than to go to this castle. And you can go straight to that castle, but if you do, you most likely get your ass handed to you, like completely destroyed. Yep. And that's what encourages you to go out and explore the rest of the map to kind of, get stronger so you can go beat that thing. And like that is the sense of adventure that I think a lot of video games have been missing for a long time, where like they're less of an adventure and more of a tour through Disneyland. They're like, it's fun. A tour through Disneyland, don't get me wrong. You're going to have a good time. But like, I'm not the one adventuring and discovering and doing the things that I want to do in order to complete my goals. Whereas with Breath of the Wild, and from what I understand, Elden Ring, they give you this goal that you most likely can't complete. I mean, like, the speedrunners are ready to prove me wrong, but you most likely can't complete that. So you go out and you do things that you want to do or that you think you need to do in order to get stronger, and then you go back and then you fight that thing again, and you're like, and you feel that progression, and that's the kind of adventure that I think video games have been lacking for a long time.
I mean, it's why I play D&D twice a week, and literally and metaphorically why I chase the dragon is because like that sense of accomplishment and going as, the intrepid adventurer, and just this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed sense of like, there's this whole world out there and I got to go and get it and go find it. Elden Ring has that. And if that's the kind of, experience that you're used to, or the one that you're looking for, cannot say it enough. I highly recommend it. Anybody who's on the fence about it, please try it. If you don't like it, I'll refund your money. Like it just, I'm that confident that it has something for anyone who's looking for that open world adventure. And yes, there is difficulty, but much like Ryan, if you need a friend, there's a lot of really cool people out there. And just in my, short time playing it, I'm sure I'm going to be playing it for another 100 hours. The community is already really strong. And that to me also speaks to the value in the game, when a lot of people aren't just hyping it up just, to be on the hype train, but they're there and they're on the forums and they're, offering help and guidance. And, it's not just, hey, get good, but let me help you and let me show you a couple cool things that I found. Like that is just, I don't know. It has, like I said, that very specific feeling of like accomplishment and reward. And I'm the kind of person who checks every corner and nook and cranny in a game ad nauseum. Like I'll roll into walls, 100 times to get that one secret wall in that secret room. Like, yes, there's one that's like, it's the cut of Thor from, I think it's from Ragnarok. And it's like after rolling into 100 walls that said secret ahead and then liar ahead, and you finally find one. He's like, I knew it. Oh, I knew it. It's there. There's just nothing. There's not a lot of games that I can compare that specific feeling to. Legend of Zelda is very close, but it's very much of its own. And I think they've damn near perfected it. And I can't give out a 10 out of 10 perfect score. I don't believe in perfection personally. I think there's always room for improvement, and this game will have improvements. It will have expansions. I'm sure they are going to take the money they've made from this game and milk it. I hope they do. I hope we get every drop out of it. But yeah, I think that it's probably going to get Game of the Year. It's definitely, I think it's earned, and I think a lot of other companies need to take notes, because you don't need microtransactions, you don't need to pay to win, you don't need a crazy in-depth tutorial system. Let the players play your game and let them figure it out, and if they need help, they've got a whole community for them. It's great. Can't say it enough. It's a great game.
I know that Elden Ring has that multiplayer aspect, but it's like you don't need the multiplayer aspect. And that's another thing that a lot of people have been, I'm noticing, leaning into, is the multiplayer aspect of everything. That's kind of what shot Fallout 76 in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have made a perfectly fine single player Fallout 76 set in West Virginia, and it had been a great single player game, and then just kind of threw in multiplayer aspects to it.
Yeah, I think it could have been multiplayer without being like an MMO, so to
Right.
speak. Like
Right.
if it had just been a single player game where like you can get together with your friends and play it co-op, like that would have been the move, I think, for 76. That would have not shot it in the foot, to take your words.
100%. Big Fallout nerd too. We could do a whole other podcast just on the Fallout games.
We
I'm
have.
just saying.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Do it again.
Baron, I don't want to. I don't know how to say this without making it sound overly dramatic. It's not this dramatic.
Whoa.
Um,
Stop being so
the
dramatic.
difficulty of the Soul games breaks my heart for you, because I know how much you get into the story of different games, especially like high fantasy, and I know you would absolutely love the story, the settings, and the lore of the Souls games. And because of the difficulty, you kind of miss out on that.
Right.
And I know you could go read the wikis and you could go watch other people play it and like kind of experience the story that way, but it's not quite the same.
Right. I don't feel immersed in the story.
Exactly. And so the fact that someone who loves story as much as you do has to miss out on the story that these games put forward, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I've went through, like the breaking heart part of it, because I do. It looks great. Let's just Dark Souls. The whole concept of it. Like, you're this undead person, and like even like the lore behind those undead people is so deep. And it's like I was like I knew that you were undead, like when you first started out. But I didn't really get further into it because it's so fucking hard. But then I just was, in preparation for this podcast, was reading up on the lore and stuff. I was like, Jesus, I would read this book.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I would read this book. I would watch this TV show. I would play this game. Oh, wait. Well, damn.
Only after, hundreds and thousands of people have come together and piecemeal the story and present it in that wiki page, because it's not there just for you to immediately pick up and absorb yourself with. You have to, it's a slow burn for sure.
Right.
What do you think a Souls game would have to do in order for you to get into it, Baron?
Okay, you know what? I was gonna kind of save this for the wrap up, but I'll just say it. Well, hold on. Guild Train's going by.
Thanks to Discord's noise cancellation, we don't get the Guild Train anymore.
Oh, well, I'm letting y'all know at home the Guild Train is chugging on.
If you talk through the Guild Train, then we'll hear it in the background. Like,
Gotcha.
if you're not saying anything, then the noise cancellation will automatically take out the background noise. But if you're talking, we still hear it. Like, as you were talking,
Gotcha.
We heard it in the background.
Nice. Well, there you go. You had to know. I will have to say that just Gunnar talking about the Elden Ring kind of convinced me that I may want to give it a chance. Because, like, you said something, Gunnar, about playing that kind of gave you the urge to go back and give some of the older games a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, if I am not having a good time with these older games, and then, he's saying that this gave him the inspiration to go back and try those older games again, because, yeah, I mean, why not? Well, I mean, maybe that would do the same thing for me. Maybe having this as an intro to the world of Souls games, quote unquote. Maybe that'll be
you've
what I
had
need.
your intro with Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah. Force. Why was I going to say Force Unleashed?
Oh, that's
Whoa.
an entirely different game.
Wow. Oh, but yeah, Force Unleashed. Is that the one with
Star
Killer?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which, if
Yeah.
that game, I think when Disney bought Star Wars, they made those games not canon. But if they
Yes.
are canon, I want to point out the fact that the First Order named their base after the guy.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, speaking of canon, do a little segue of my own here. So did Ryan use the only
No,
Guild decree?
every person gets their own guild decree at every episode.
Yeah,
So if
even
you
us.
have one, you can fire one off.
I've been hanging on to it, and I think it's good now right before we go. And I feel like this is it should be probably revered at the same level as a wish spell. I need to be very careful with how I word this. So, guild decree, Rick, until it is the next. Okay, until the next guild decree specifies specifically a name change for you, your name in the Discord server shall now be Guildmaster Rick Perry.
Okay.
Just for your joke at the opener.
You know what? I'll even my last name is spelled differently, but I will spell it as the action Perry just for that. I have to say that's probably the most creative guild decree we've had in 3 seasons. We've never had someone attempt to change my name. That's great. I love that.
I thought it was a really well opener. A good joke.
And I will also I will use my guild decree as a caveat to your guild decree that Rick Perry cannot use his guild decree to change his name.
Oh, the addendum.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I had to put that in there. Also, I haven't used a
fine.
guild decree in a while, so.
Yeah, that's done. Done. So it is written, so it shall be done.
Perfect.
So, I mean, it's about time. Do you want to put a bow on this thing, Baron?
Yeah, I will do my best on putting a bow on this. I feel highly unqualified to speak on the Souls games, including Elden Ring. I believe, though, and I hope that anybody listening that was in my position at the beginning of this podcast has reached the same conclusion as I have, and it's, you know what, maybe it's worth giving a chance to. Maybe my experience in the beginning wasn't the best, but maybe now's the time to go back and maybe give it another shot. I think that we have done a really good job talking about the depth of these games, and also given out a few alternatives, such as the Fallen Order game that we've talked about extensively, or Cyberpunk and the Mr. Stud and the Midnight Lady. But regardless of how I feel about the Souls games now, there is no dispute that these games have had a huge impact on the culture of gaming. And, I mean, even with Elden Ring, George R.R. Martin is getting involved. So it should kind of tell you how influential these games are getting and will continue to get, because I have no doubt that these games are just going to continue to grow in influence, and we'll see where it goes. Hopefully, fingers crossed, easy mode.
All right, Gunnar, if people like what you had to say, where can they find you on the internet?
Absolutely. Well said. Baron, Rick, thank you again. You can find me pretty much everywhere else you can find most people. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. I have stepped away for right now. My life's kind of in the process of changing, but everywhere you can find me, the Shogun Gun, all one word. I go by Shogun. My friends just, that's been my tag for many years. I'm most active on Instagram. It's where I find a lot of other artists and kind of promote them. And I do a lot of freelance work in my off time for artwork, design. I do a lot of concept style artworks. I've done tons of stuff for friends and family and just anybody who likes my kind of style. If you want to see my artworks and stuff, it's all on Instagram. And I'm pretty active on Twitter too. I'm definitely going to go and bug Ryan some more about arcade games. But again, guys, this was awesome. I had a great time, and thank you so much for letting me into your space here. I hope next time I can come back and join you guys again.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Casters Guild. Make sure to find us on all the socials and email us at castersguild@gmail.com. Make sure to check out the links below. Check out that T-Villain. Get yourself a $13 awesome t-shirt. Check out our featured charity. Once again, that is for my niece who needs a colon transplant, so please give what you can. Thank you very much, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I'm Ryan. Goodbye. I'm Ryan.
Goodbye, Ryan.